Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. I'm Kirk Henderson, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-editor-in-chief over at Mavs Moneyball and co-host here on All Things Pod Maverick, Josh Bowe. Josh, how you doing tonight?
Doing okay. I think the heat has gotten to me, at least. I think you said it kind of got to you too, but we are in it. This is quite a part of the year in terms of trying to think of stuff to talk about, combined with just the oppressive heat raining down. I'm going to try to push through. I told Kirk right before he went live, I have very low energy today, so I will do my best.
Yeah, thank you for noticing my haircut, Kay, on the on the chat there stream. That cracks me up. I judge by when I need a haircut when I go to Orange Theory and I run my sweaty hands through my hair and it sticks straight up. Like, it was like this tall, and I was like, that's too much. I need to take care of it. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, it is August 1st. It's about 9:30 at night on a Tuesday here. We have been bad about recording twice a week. I have been bad about recording twice a week. I felt sick on Friday and just opted against it because I really like hosting these shows where I can bring other people from, Mavs fandom on to talk about, whatever people feel like talking about, frankly. But I just haven't had the juice. So I'm going to try to get that going again this Friday. Also, I'm like oddly busy at my real job. It's very stupid. But, look, we've had a couple of things happen in the past 2 days, which is nice enough because we did take some questions on podcast via, we have an email that you can always send questions into. Got a really good one that we're going to start with here in a little bit. You can always email us at podmaverickpodcast@gmail.com. I check that a couple times a week, and I'm always happy to answer questions and talk with fans. Really appreciate that. But first, there were, a couple of news stories today. So, friend of the show, friend of the site, fellow media member Grant Afseth meandered over to DFW native Miles Turner, who played basketball at the same high school you did. Which one was that?
That's Euless Trinity High School.
I know this because I always see the football program in my brain, and then I can't remember what
that is what our school is known for. We are not known for basketball.
I was going to tease you about not going over there to do this, but my car read 111 degrees. You also have a day job. This is Grant's day job to do basketball.
I'm going to be honest. I had no idea it was even happening today.
I had zero idea. Like, there was who's the guy that just got traded from the Celtics to the Grizzlies?
Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart holds a local camp up in Marcus every summer. Like, there are so many Dallas-Fort Worth basketball players. And because of like the 7 or 8 dudes that were drafted this year, we're just going to see more of that in the future. It's great for the city, but we didn't even know it happened. So it's hard for us to do. And so Grant went over there today, and I'll try to remember to post the link in the story to give them credit over there at DallasBasketball.com, SI.com, whatever the hell their site is. Everybody knows it. It's like one of the oldest basketball sites in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, ran by our friend and crazy guy Mike Fisher, Dalton Trigg, all those. We're very friendly with them. Dalton used to work with us. So Carlisle was actually there today, former Dallas Mavericks coach Rick Carlisle. And Rick Carlisle uttered this quote to Grant: "I think Luka is going to be the MVP this year. I think he and Kyrie Irving are going to be great." Now, for an August 1st content, nothing better. Nothing better.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Grant. Just a real, Luka's been on the mind. There's the World Cup starts at the end of the month. Slovenia is playing a remarkable number of friendlies, as Meta Robinson covered for us, with Luka playing some of them. The pictures of Luka have come out. you know, when we talked last, we talked a little bit about Luka's weight. We did not talk about, and we talked about kind of his minutes and usage and yada, 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 yada. We hadn't seen pictures of Luka yet. Between this quote and the way Luka looks, man, this is how you talk me into shit. All right. Well, Luka looks fantastic. Now, here's the real funny part. Luka looks fantastic for Luka. Like, he still doesn't have like definition in his arms. He just looks like he looks in great shape, though. Like, really, the thing that cracks me up when I see him, because he always wears the tight, like the full length leggings. And like, that's where his legs are just fucking tree trunks. Like, the man is a beast. And so you pair that with the Carlisle quote, and I gotta be honest, I'm in a great headspace with Luka Doncic right now. What do you think at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, this is the time to be in the good headspace. They just had a pretty good off season. I mean, it's not fun to think in the summer when it's already look, it's already 110 degrees outside. I'm not going to think negative Mavs thoughts right now. Like, this is the time for optimism until we actually see them get on the floor. So why not? I love Rick just seems to love to like combine this with that Jason Kidd kind of thing he gave when he left the team, like the way he talks about the Mavericks since he's left the organization. He's very effusive with his praise. He's not burning any bridges there, that's for sure, at least publicly. So, hey, that's always nice to see. You know, regardless of whatever he thinks behind the scenes, who cares? So yeah, that's fun. I mean, you know, Rick was an influential part of Luka's NBA career. I mean, he coached him his first, 2 seasons or first 3 seasons, right? And so, like, there's going to be, even if they kind of butted heads at times during Luka's first couple of seasons here, I mean, I'm sure Luka will one day look back at it and be able to fondly, I don't know, maybe not fondly, but I'm sure there's got to be some good stuff still there between those two to have some mutual respect. So
I think that's got to be the case, because with what we know and what we've heard through like whispers from various Mavs people, like neither you and I do any reporting, but we talk to enough people. The relationship with Carlisle and the organization had run its course, and everyone knew it but Cuban. And so it was just kind of one of those things. You read these, like, this is a really good article by Grant, talks a lot about Miles Turner, gets some great quotes where Miles Turner is one of the NBA's like quiet good guys. And it's really fun to read like Rick be effusive about players, which once the season starts, that stuff sort of stops because you're going game to game to game. And it's just, there's some great stuff in here. He's he also mentions, that he's going to be up in Springfield for isn't it in Springfield? The Hall of Fame,
Yep.
Which is in 12 days. And we'll kind of briefly touch on that, but I don't want to beat that into the ground because we'll probably, that's going to be some peak. That's peak off-season coverage with Dirk Nowitzki entering the Hall of Fame. He gives this quote. He meaning Dirk Nowitzki is just a super special guy. I was very privileged to be with him for 11 years and wouldn't trade him for anything. He says that he talks about the Mavericks off-season. I think the Mavericks made a lot of great moves. They had a great draft. And so, like, this is just like it's in a normal period of time, this would be good content. This is like manna from heaven, if we're being candid, because there's just not a ton to talk about. So I'm glad Grant did that. So all right. So we got the other thing that I wanted to kind of kick to you, and if you're, Mark Stein has been doing some, runs his own Substack. He's a friend of the site. I get the privilege to chat with him every now and again. He's also going on the radio at least once a week on Saturdays. What's the radio? What's
97.1 The Freak.
The Freak. Jeff Skin Wade is there all the time. They are, and we had a chance to hang out with them a little bit at the start of last offseason, and what they're doing at the Freak is like a real experiment in radio. Those guys are working all the time, filling in hours and stuff. It's a very different radio station. And so Mark Stein is getting a chance every Saturday to host kind of an hour of his own show. He also does podcasts that go up once in probably once or twice a week. And so he did I'm pretty sure this one was said on a podcast where he said
it was said on his radio show.
Oh, it was said on the radio show.
It was said,
okay.
But they put it into a podcast feed and they split it up in segments. So yeah.
Okay, so
but it was from his Saturday
quote, or do you want me to?
Go ahead. I don't have it pulled up.
Okay, I got it pulled up here because you wrote the article around it. He said the Mavericks don't want to be done. Maybe they are done with this roster because further moves are not available to them. They would love if the chance to make another trade run at Clint Capela from the Atlanta Hawks materializes to this point. And you wrote kind of a whole piece around it because the Capela of it all speaks to where you sort of land on whether you would like Clint Capela for this team or not, speaks to whether you think the Mavericks are prepared to enter next season or not. Is that a fair kind of summary? Talk to me about this is what I'm getting at.
I definitely think the people that really want him on the team are probably the people that think the Mavericks could be like a legitimate title contender as soon as next season. There's definitely some people that think he's like the missing piece. There's some people that think that they just need him because they're worried they're going to have another not miss the playoff type season. And Mavs fans have seen, the franchise's history has been cursed at center for the most part. And so obviously some fans are concerned about, seeing the same faces roll out there again, even with the drafting of Derek Lively. But yeah, it's just one of those things where he kind of offered a little bit of new news, or at least something I hadn't heard, where I think he dropped that Atlanta was asking for Josh Green in 10 to trade Capela, and I'm assuming it would have been like Capela and their 15th pick in the first round. And I think that's good that the Mavericks held on that and didn't really budge, because they ended up turning 10 into 2 draft picks that fill giant positions of need. And Clint Capela is over 30 and hasn't necessarily been his best self the last season or so. And he's had injury history his entire career. He's had issues with injuries, and there's nothing wrong with him. And I think he would fit well in Dallas, but it's just part of me can't wrap my head around the logic of, if you trade for Clint Capela, why did you draft Derek Lively 12th? And the rebuttal that I get from people is, well, Lively's not ready to start. And then I'm like, okay, well, if he's not ready to start, when is he going to be ready? Why would you draft someone with that valuable of a draft pick if they're not going to be a starter within a season or two? And then, of course, it's like, look toward the future. And it's like, well, do you really want Clint Capela? I don't know. It's just, we've seen this Mavericks team succeed without a bona fide starting center. We've seen them use platoon with Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell, and Lord, they've dug the bottom of the barrel. Willie Cauley-Stein and Boban, and they've had success. And I don't think any of their playoff failures since Luka's been drafted, I don't know if you can tie those directly into, well, they needed a better center. Like, of course it would help, but to me, their position of weakness since Luka's been here is they just haven't had the dynamic perimeter players next to him in terms of athletic, dynamic guards and wings.
Because that's the most
important position in the NBA.
Right.
So again, I just wanted to write a piece that was like, if they do trade for Capela, I understand. I just don't see the logic when you drafted Lively, even if you don't think Lively's going to be a starter right away. Because my thing is, what if, okay, he's not ready day 1. What if he's ready day 30, or day 60, or day 90, or, what if he's ready by next training camp of the 2024-2025 season? And it's like, now you got Clint Capela as a backup at $22 million.
The same problem the Hawks have.
Yeah. The Hawks are trying to trade Capela so that they can make room for the guy that they like a lot more. So yeah, it's just, I think the Maverick, if they didn't draft Lively, now we're, like, let's say they drafted Grady Dick or something.
Yeah.
Then it makes a lot more sense to me. Like, it makes a ton more sense, because you're not blocking the progress of a young guy by acquiring him, and it still fits the need of center, I think, is greater if you didn't spend 12 at Lively. So again, I honestly just think that they can be somewhat successful this season with the platoon that they have, And I would rather they just invest resource. If they're going to make a trade, I would just rather them try to find a wing.
I think that's right. That's sort of where I am. And if you don't believe in Lively, let me tell you, I understand.
Yeah.
Where I live with Lively right now is kind of a chronic pessimist about this team, is that from what I've seen of him, his learning curve and the things he's able to pick up is impressive. And he's not going to make the same kind of mistakes JaVale McGee makes. Like, one thing we've not talked enough about is that I think Stein reported this. Like JaVale McGee is not going to be on the Mavericks to start the season.
Stein, Cato, I think even McMahon said it on the Hoop Collective.
It's super awkward because like McGee, it was over in Spain representing the Mavericks with the NBPA last week for some reason. I don't remember. I wouldn't. And it's like I guess he knows. I mean, he's going to get paid regardless, so he probably doesn't care. But it's like it's so he's not going to be on the team. So the Mavericks are going to have 14 guys. We're going to circle back to kind of that roster spot at some point. So you got Holmes, Maxey, Dwight Powell, and Derek Lively. And I get why that makes you uncomfortable. I also think that it becomes a problem in certain situations and matchups, not necessarily every game. And the grind of the NBA season is about getting through it. And I think you try to problem solve on the fly. We talked a little bit about this last week and have talked a bit about it all summer. The Mavericks have done a much better job building out spaces 10 through 14 or 15 in their roster. So I feel better about their ability to not throw, like, they're not going to be throwing, stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Like, I do think there's a real, chance that we get into the season and they look at the roster and say, okay, we have a guard logjam.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make some changes. Now, that may not happen, but I think that's just on the possibility, the list of possibilities. So for anybody that's like feeling very impatient, I get why, because it's been such a historically bad position, but I'm okay with it for now. I really am. So there you are. You cut out for a minute.
My webcam sucks. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I'm kind of the same way, and I get needing to move off Tim Hardaway Jr. to maybe clear that logjam. I do think the Seth Curry signing is a little odd if they don't trade Tim by maybe the trade deadline, because they're just going to run out of minutes. I don't know how Luka, Kyrie, Seth, Tim, and Hardy all get minutes in the rotation. And I'm not even talking about Exum, but Exum feels like the 14th man or something, so I'm not even thinking about him. But even if you don't, you take him out of the picture. I mean, I would imagine Seth, Tim, and Hardy all feel like that they should be playing. Like Exum might even be able to massage that and understand that he's kind of coming back into the league, so he's not going to get minutes right away. But those other three guys, they've all been regular NBA contributors except for Hardy. But Hardy's coming off a good end of his rookie season, so he's probably excited about his year 2 opportunity. So you can move Tim. You can play Tim some at the 3, but we've seen that in the past, and that usually is not the best solution. But so, and maybe the Mavericks have tried to trade Tim for a wing, and there's just nothing that they can get out of him. That's also a possibility. I mean, if it comes down to it, and they try to trade for a wing, and it's like, okay, look, we can't get this, but we can move Tim for Capela. I mean, I wouldn't hate it, but I also it doesn't move the needle a lot for me. Because I would like to see Lively play a lot. Because I mean, that's we like the young guys. That's how it is.
And as it was explained to me, well, no, I think it was Sam Viceni said this. I'm pretty sure it was Sam Viceni said this on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, where when Lively started the year at Duke, he was getting no minutes. And by the end of the season, he was arguably the best defensive player in the country. So obviously his learning curve is not going to be that in the NBA, but if it's a quarter of that, if he goes from being, a flailing rookie to a guy you can get 22 minutes a game out of, I'm okay with that. Because we're talking about buying minutes. I mean, good Lord, just go through Basketball Reference and look at some of the centers the Mavs have thrown out the last 3 to 4 years, and it's really, really uncomfortable. All right, so because the World Cup, like we basically have a month to kind of talk World Cup. Like Luka plays, so we're recording this on Tuesday the 1st. Luka plays Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Dallas Central Time. Well, Slovenia plays. I'm pretty sure Luka's playing. I don't think Giannis Antetokounmpo is playing. There's going to be so much of this, and honestly, because we're an NBA website as opposed to like a Luka Doncic or international basketball website, we're going to be covering some of this stuff as it comes up. I'm not going to spend too much on it right now just because, there's other things we're going to talk about. So what I did about 2 hours ago, I said, what questions do you have? And then I happened to check to my Twitter timeline. Or X timeline, whatever the bullshit we're calling it these days. And then I checked the email, and we got an email. I'm not going to read his name because he wrote that he's a little embarrassed to admit this, but I want to point out, like, number one, this was a fantastic series of questions, and number two, you should absolutely not be embarrassed when asking this. But I'm going to read part of the email in whole, and then I think we can talk about it a little bit. As someone who's watched thousands of Mavericks and other NBA games over the years, I'm a bit embarrassed to say that I can struggle with following detailed discussions of basketball X's and O's. While listening to basketball podcasts, I often find myself Googling terms like high screen and roll, ball screen, Spain, pick and roll, or double curl to make sure I follow the key points that the speaker is trying to get across. Having never played basketball competitively outside of an intramural or pickup game, I haven't been formally trained in offensive and defensive schemes. With that context, my one request is that you and Josh and other hosts spend some time explaining concepts when they organically come up during your podcasts. I religiously watch basketball and find the experience more satisfying when I understand the sets or actions each team is employing in an effort to tilt the scales in their favor. Man, apparently Huck also wants to know detailed basketball schemes. Hush. This was one of the best kind of questions that I think, because it's not a question in so much as a discussion. And you and I played high-level high school basketball. I was a practice player at a women's college team. We've watched a ton. You have this, this innate sense of watching something once and being able to describe it in a way that I can't within like 5 terms. It's really impressive. So I think like during the course of the year, we can try some of this with what the Mavericks are doing. But I will admit and say out loud that like Josh and I sort of go out of our way to not use coaching terms because the coaching terminology changes, and like it can sort of try to think how to phrase this. It can sort of drive me nuts, like using the colloquial, like the correct terms. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because like you said, the terminology changes, and it's also you run into situations like this listener who emailed you where like Spain pick and roll is not that's not something that you can use context clues to. Like it's just totally so much jargony that you hear that, and it's just if you don't know, you don't know, and you have, like you said, you have to Google it, and that's where
number one, Googling it is a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
Like, first of all, like I don't even do that, and I probably should. I was looking back in the day. There's a guy. He's now an assistant coach for the Thunder writer. His name's Sebastian Prudy, who used to run a website called NBA Playbook that would like walk you through some of this stuff. But the terms changed so much. Like 10 years ago, you could hear Tom Thibodeau screaming "ice, ice, ice," which was basically like it was a defensive term where, if I remember correctly, it's like really. It's something to do with defending the pick and roll. And it was just, and like stuff like this is natural. Where I lose interest, me as a basketball viewer who watches hundreds and hundreds of basketball games, is like, I will have a hard time discussing stuff in those terms because I don't really have an interest in learning them. Like our friend, former colleague, writer over at D Magazine now, Istok Franco, once referred to a Josh Green dive, like he basically got a pass on the run and drove to the basket. and he referred to it as stampede action. I showed it to like 7 different people because I'm watching this and I'm like, am I stupid? He gets the ball on a like cut and like is running at the basket. Is this a real bet? And like, turns out, yes, it is. I will never once describe something as stampede action. It is not it's not in my brain. I just personally can't do it. That said, I do think we can try, particularly when talking about these games in the future, to talk about the sort of scheme adjustments and walk through what we're seeing a little more. I think that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, and I think something that kind of opened my eyes was, I think, he said Spain pick and roll, and that one made sense to me. And then he even included like, a high screen and roll. And in my brain, that's just something I've said so many times
Since I was in 6th grade
that I didn't even think about, like, okay, what if someone doesn't know that? Like, to me, that was just like, I thought that was common. And that's
no, it's not.
It's
silly.
just
not.
No. Yeah.
And
so
it's
just a good reminder that you just, basketball can get really jargony and inside baseball-y and things like that.
Well, so I had the opportunity / penance this weekend to be the only coach for my 7-year-old son's YMCA basketball team. And like, when you're talking to basketball to people who don't understand it at all, like, breaking down core concepts is just so important. And like, there's 2 of the kids on the team are like really good, but they don't seem to understand that you cannot pick up the ball and run with it. And like, explaining that stuff on a core, it's like explaining baseball, which is incredibly hard for me. Like, soccer is such a rhythmic, beautiful sport. Like, there's elements of basketball that when you start talking about it, you realize how jargony it is. So this, I'm really glad that he sent this message. I hope he actually sends it again closer to the season so that I remember. And that's just something that's been living in my head since he sent it. All right, so we got some really ridiculous questions when I asked this. Way too many people really want to know what Luka Doncic knew or knows about the Kennedy assassination. Fellow Mavs Moneyball contributor and editor Ben Zadell said, "Do you think the CIA had a role in the Kennedy assassination?" Like that, like, Ben, why are you doing this to me? My friend, let's just kind of go through these one-on-one. My friend Rolos at Speak On It Rolo, one of the hosts of the 77, what is it? The 77 Spaces. I hope I get that right. I join it every time I hear it. Asks, where could you see McGee realistically going without costing a young player or a draft pick? Europe, like, I don't know. Like, you really think they could try? Like, is there even anything? Like, is there a salary dump situation for him that you've?
Only if the Mavericks include a pick. I don't see. Only if he's part of like a bigger trade, and he's there to help with some salary matching. Like, if it's like the Mavericks are making a bigger trade and they're trading like Josh Green or Jaden Hardy, sorry, we have to include JaVale McGee just to make the money work. Like, maybe that's how it happens but otherwise, like, you have to give up a pick. Or you have to waive him, which I think that was another question someone asked that was like, why would you waive and stretch him? Because then you're basically paying for him for 5 years. It's a smaller amount, but he's on your cap for 5 more years at a smaller number. And honestly, I would just waive him. Like, and I think I heard some rumblings that they might just waive him, like for maybe Stein or someone else, because it's only this season and then the next season. So, like, would you? And again, his number is not that bad. Like, it's $6 million, so that's not going to kill your cap. So it's like, would you rather have $2 million a season on your cap for 5 more years, or just take your medicine and do 6 over the next 2? I think they might just do that.
I think they might too. I mean, all these options are on the table. It's really, it's so funny. I remember being upset, and I'm sure I was. There's podcast evidence of this about the signing, and I remember thinking that it was a horrible signing. And then I remember going on, my friend and podcast frenemy Matt Moore saying, "I think this is the worst signing of the summer," and me being like, "Really?" And then it just kind of sinking in, thinking, "Oh yeah, Yeah, this was the worst signing of the summer. When you pair that with the fact that they also lost Brunson, it's just brutal. All right, so before I get to the next question, I want to note, if you guys could go ahead and like the stream. Obviously, it's off-season content in August. Nobody's really going to care, but I would appreciate it if you did that while you're listening to the show. If you also have the ability to, if you're not a subscriber to the show, please go ahead and consider hitting that subscribe button. If you click it twice, you actually get notified when we go live. We do all of our shows live. Not only because I really like the comments, but it also allows us to skip a step where I don't have to upload a video. Very, very important to be efficient with our time. So thank you so much for that. All right. So before I answer the next question, I did want to note for people watching on video, my wife absolutely kicked me out of my office, and that's why I have a weird background today. That's that. So Rollo also answered or asked a couple more questions that I enjoy, because this is a little more specific. He said, do you prefer writing articles or doing podcasts? It's a good question. What, Josh? I don't know if I've ever even asked you this, because I berate you into doing the podcast.
It depends. Podcast is easier creatively, I think. Like, in terms of just like trying to formulate your idea and get it out there. And I think it's easier to just say something than write it down. But there's something about writing that I'm just, kind of romantic over. I think I like being able to write something, and then I think it's easier to go back and look at your older work. I mean, obviously you can do that with podcasts, but it's just
listening's harder.
Yeah, there's just something fun about going back into your old stuff and see what you said. And there's some concepts that you can do with writing. Obviously, I like to use some screenshots and visuals. I know you can do that in podcasting too. If you're doing a video podcast, you can pull up clips and screenshots. I think we can do that with what we're doing right now.
Sure,
with the program we're using. But I mean, I'm like the last vestige of people that thought that they were going to get a job for a newspaper. I think I'm like the last generation. So I'm probably a bit more nostalgic for writing, because, I graduated high school in 2007 and college in 2011, and newspapers were on the way out, but there was still a sliver of hope where I was like, oh, this will be my career. So I'm still, there's still a part of me that will always, I think, prefer writing because of that.
I think I prefer podcasting more, just because I'm not quite as good a writer. I'm much stupider now that I've had children. I just don't have the critical thinking skills to be, because it's Josh I've probably done this 100 times since having my son, where I'll pop into the Slack and be like, I had an idea and it left my head. I will say what's nice about the whole process is it becomes a bit of a perpetual content cycle, not to be all meta, but you podcast, you talk about what you want to, and then it gives you an idea to write, and then you talk about what you wrote. It's really nice. There was an odd tweet, guy deleted it, but there was an odd tweet about 2 or 3, maybe it was last week, where it's talking about the effort of making a podcast. And I just can't express this enough, guys. It is so straightforward to make a podcast. I don't want to call it easy, because it does take some work, but if you want to do something like this, do it. Mics, every laptop nowadays has a mic. You can plug in headphones. Your audio quality might not be great, but get out there and make something if you want to. Don't do it because you want, I don't know, fame. That's not the right word. There's no fucking fame in this. Do it because you have something to say. Part of why I berated Josh into doing this regularly, because he was the one that started the Mavs Moneyball podcast feed, was we were talking about this stuff anyways. Mm-hmm. So why not actually do something with it and share it with the world? So if you're having these conversations with your good friends, record it, try it. You get better at it. I've listened to our older shows. We sucked. Nick and Isaac are so good at this because they do it every day. It takes work, it takes effort, but more than anything else, if you like talking about the Mavericks or talking about whatever, talk about whatever. The memes are there. Anyway, Rollo, that's a good question. He has 2 more that I like, and then we're going to move on. If you weren't a fan of the Mavericks, what teams would you be a fan of? That's a good question. I love the Thunder. Is that ridiculous?
No, I mean,
I've loved the Thunder for years.
Yeah, there's a lot of because remember, they started getting good around
I was a big KD guy
2009,
because
2010.
watching Kevin Durant at University of Texas was the last like college basketball religious experience I ever had. He was so good.
Oh, did you see him live in Texas? Did you actually go to a
No,
game?
but I remember it
like
was
just
my
watching
first
his
year.
games.
Yeah, it was my first year out of college. So 2007, I think is right.
Mhm.
And so it was like appointment television for me because it was just all of a sudden this, 6'10" guy is just shooting threes and like scoring all over the place.
Yeah, I managed to I drove up to Norman, Oklahoma, and went to OU, Texas, where Durant played at OU, and that was pretty crazy. Yeah, OKC is a popular pick, especially for DFW people, because I had like a lot of friends in high school and college that were like, the Mavericks are never gonna, like, before 2011. They're like, Mavericks aren't gonna do it. I'm tired of this. I like watching Kevin Durant. I went to UT, and there was like a really nice, go right to the Thunder. I guess for me, the thing I'm big on is like I'm a Mavericks fan because I grew up in Dallas. Like I don't like I'm a fan of sports. Like I'm not a fan of any sports team that's outside of the Dallas area. Like a legitimate fan. Like I like other teams, but like I'm big on like the regional, like the community, the growing, like where
You're
grew
a
up.
huge baseball fan.
I was a huge baseball fan.
Yeah.
Rangers for a long time. My dad, we had season tickets from 2000 to like 2012.
Oh wow!
I would go to like 70 games a year.
That's awesome.
I went a lot. So I used to love the Rangers. I just kind of fell out of it because I just can't. It's hard to watch baseball.
No, it's baseball becomes the thing you do, and almost as much as watch.
Right. So the only thing I can think of is I would probably be fans from where my parents are from. My mom's from the Bronx, New York City.
Ooh.
My dad's from Philly. So I would probably be either like a Knicks or a Sixers guy, I would imagine, if I wasn't a Mavs fan.
I learned
I can think of.
Random baseball fact I learned today that Russell Wilson was drafted in the MLB draft before Aaron Judge.
Mm-hmm. He was a really good baseball player.
Crazy thing to me. Okay, so the last question, and I'm just going to answer this because Rollo is specifically asking this of me because we are fellow old heads. Favorite R&B song you sing with your whole chest? The answer to that one is "Wifey" by Next. And if you don't know what song that is, go ahead and look it up. It's a jam. All right, so we got a this is a good question from KT at KT_WZA. What do you expect or hope that the guard rotation will be, considering as of now the Mavs have Luka, Kyrie, Josh, Hardy, Tim, Seth, Exum, and even AJ Lawson and Mike Miles Jr.? That's a great question. I don't know.
Well, Luka and Kyrie are playing what? Somewhere between 30 and 35 a game, right?
Yep.
I assume Seth is probably the big one because he's quietly like kind of been, I don't know if it's quiet, but he doesn't stay on the floor a lot.
Right.
His injury history has kind of caught up to him. So I would peg him probably somewhere like 18 to 20 per game. But it depends on
18
Tim.
to 20 like every other game.
Yeah, not every game. Tim is the one that I don't know because if he's on the roster, he's going to play because he has to play with Luka. So he might, he should be probably a 25-minute per game, 22 to 25 guy. And then Hardy is a question mark because where do you slide him in? Exum I see is like he is the break glass.
I think he plays more small forward. That's I don't think he plays. I don't think he plays guard. I think he plays like emergency and backup small forward.
Okay, that's interesting.
I mean, he's big.
No, he is. He's definitely
6'5" and he's hefty.
And he can jump, and he's got a wingspan.
I mean, that's where like the World Cup comes in because there's somebody in the chat earlier said they expect Exum to play more than Josh Green at the World Cup, and I think that's true. Like I really do, just from like pure playing experience. And it'll be worth tuning in to watch Australia just to see if there is a size difference. Because Josh Green is a guard. Anybody that tells you he can guard wings has not watched him try to guard wings enough. Because like Kevin Durant's huge. Obviously, it's not fair, but so's Paul George, so's Kawhi Leonard. Like those guys all make Josh look small, and that's just a challenge over 82 games. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're right. And that how does that factor in too with Josh? Because are you going to play him more at the 3 or are you going to play him more at the 2? Because he's like their only point of attack defender on the roster. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how they navigate this. If Tim Hardaway Jr. gets traded, think it makes things a lot simpler. But if not, I'm really curious to see where Hardy is, like, because he finished the season so strong, and then they've basically signed a guy that does exactly what he does in terms of Seth Curry, like off ball, not a point guard, but can do some point guard things, shooter. Like that's Seth and that's Hardy. So I'm going to be really curious to see what their plans are with those two and how they're going to try to get them both time.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think, I want to address like this. So Matt Sullivan asked a question that's related to Josh. He said, should the Mavs let Josh handle the ball more and use Luka as a souped up Draymond role, and the two of them are on the court together with Kyrie early in games to save Luka for the fourth? So I have two answers for this because this is related to the guard rotation stuff that Katie asks. I think that number one, Luka should absolutely be used as a hammer in the fourth. That's the thing that I'm just going to talk about continuously. I don't think the Mavericks actually do it because I don't think they're going to be able to convince Luka to, like, because Luka wants to start the game a certain way. That's what I would hope, though, because I think using Luka to close games when instead of using Luka to start games, I think is a better use of Luka just because he's that good. Second, I think that Josh Green's usefulness to the Mavericks is sapped when playing with Kyrie and Luka. I think that because he's good with the ball, and like he didn't really play that well with those guys. And granted, very limited minutes, and so I would love to see what training camp and time can do together. But it's just like I want to see Josh Green be creative, and if he can't be creative, he doesn't really serve. He's not able to play that X factor role. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, we would all love it if Luka bumped that usage down a couple notches and let Josh Green do some things with the ball. Like that's kind of the goal, right? Like he just because we know like there's history. He cannot have the usage he's having if they want to win a title. Like he's eventually just going to have to pare it back. And the big thing up until they traded for Kyrie was, well, the roster wasn't necessarily good enough for him to pare it back. Like he had to. Like last season he's scoring 50 just to beat Houston by like 7, or that he had to get a 60-20-20 game to beat the Knicks in overtime. Like he couldn't pare it down, or they would have been an even worse team than they were last year. So this season will be interesting to see because they didn't necessarily upgrade the dynamic players on the roster, even though they added good players like Derek Lively and Prosper for youth and Grant Williams. But again, those are more role players that kind of are just younger, better versions of the players that kind of left the roster over the last 2 years. So they still don't have a ton of guys that can handle the ball necessarily. So, maybe training camp off season with Kyrie, maybe they can figure that out a little bit more. But I think fans' wishes of like them, like Kyrie and Luka running like 10 pick and rolls together every game, like that's not happening this season. And before fans think about it, like, the same thing happened with Steph and Kevin Durant and Golden State. Golden Warriors fans were like, well, why don't Steph and Kevin Durant run a pick and roll every time down the floor? It's like almost unguardable. Like guys, like that, just regular season basketball is different. They just don't do that. Like
it also brings the two best defenders together.
Yeah.
Like Bobby pointed that out to me during the season. I didn't really think about it like that. You use it like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Right. Is kind of my thought. So there's a lot we're going to have a lot to talk about there on that one. This is a good question that neither of us know shit about. Coops at Coops COOPZ and then 3 underscores. Who do you guys have winning the World Cup? Now, you probably haven't even looked at the group stuff. I've been staring at it here for a couple of days because I'm a true sicko.
All right, you talk first so I can look it up.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah. So the United States, in terms of betting favorites, the United States are a betting favorite. The second best, like in terms of betting, is Canada, which is fascinating. Then you got Slovenia and Australia, plus 900 each. I'm sorry, I didn't mention Canada's plus 400, and the United States is negative 105. The group play, I'm looking at the different groups, and there's a real chance that, kind of like Slovenia has an incredible path, to be quite candid with everybody. Like Slovenia has, I don't even know what some of these countries, like their group play, they should win all 6 games or all, because there's 6 total games played and the top 2 teams in a given group advance. Then you go on to So
I'm
it's
looking at Slovenia's group right now.
they're gonna unless somebody gets hurt, like they're just gonna kill. And then the way it goes into the second round is also based on group play, where the top two teams from A play the top two teams from B. And so it's like when you go through that, and all this is available at FIBA.basketball. You can like just Google this sort of stuff and figure it out. I'm not a genius, but I'm looking like Slovenia play is FGH. So just going ahead to round two, that would be
they'd probably be playing like Germany or Australia.
Which and when I look at the rosters for the World Cup, and it's interesting, Germany's like a plus 2,500. There's a real like Germany is a good roster, but it's got to be like a path problem. I'm going to be very interested just to see here. You kind of got to pick as a favorite the United States, but the United States is not sending this is going to.
Yeah, I was going to say, what does the U.S. roster look like? Like, what group are they?
It's really
sending?
pretty darn good.
Okay.
Let me go back and take a look, see if I can click into it specifically, because it's an interesting team. Overview head to head. Where is the roster? Come on, you guys. Roster tracker. Who will be playing? No, that's from July. So USA basketball.
I think I got one.
World Cup roster.
Paulo Banchero, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Jaren Jackson Jr., Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, Bobby Portis, Austin Reeves. That is an interesting group.
It's what I like about it, man.
What?
It strikes me as a group of guys that could play as a team. There's the best.
Also a lot of give a shit guys.
Yes, yes, and like Paolo Banchero on an international stage, woo, buddy, that dude is a man. Like Mikal Bridges, Brunson, you get all the Villanova guys together because Josh Hart is there too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the give a shit meter on this team is really, really awesome. And Steve Kerr's the head coach. I get really bullish on this stuff because I like the whole point of international play is supposed to I know nationalism is not cool, but the whole point of international sports is to be able to channel aggressive feelings into something ridiculous like sports. So I'm really looking forward to these guys playing. They're kind of my betting favorite odds on, but I'm really looking forward obviously to see Slovenia. I want to see what France does without Victor Wembanyama. Him taking off from it, I understand why. Spain's an interesting one. Ricky Rubio's playing in his 19th international tournament. He's our age at this point. I wonder who's playing on Brazil. Ooh, I wonder if
who's playing for Canada for their betting odds. Is Wiggins playing?
Their whole Team Canada Basketball World Cup. They have, Dwight Powell's playing.
Hey, he'll do okay.
So they have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, RJ Barrett, Dylan Brooks. Didn't know he was Canadian. That's sure. Luguentz Dort, Zach Edey, who the college player of the year, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't know if he's playing.
I always forget Shai. Kelly
Olynyk, Jamal Murray, Kevin Pangos. Remember that guy? Dwight Powell. And then they got a couple of other guys, and it's.
I saw Jamal is playing, I think.
Yeah, they have the talent.
They got some guys, yeah.
They have the talent where it's just we watched Jamal Murray in his final run. They might just mow through some people. So
this will be pretty fun. There's something about Team USA when it's not all the All NBA guys that almost makes me more interested in watching them because. It's fun to watch LeBron and Wade and Durant just
it is.
Dunk and dunk every other possession and win games 150 to 80 or whatever. But there's something cool about seeing a lot of these guys on the Team USA roster. This is kind of like the next generation, Banchero, Bridges, Edwards, Halliburton. I'm really intrigued to see Halliburton and Edwards for sure. That's going to be a lot of fun because those are two guys that give a shit. And Halliburton, I think, I want more people to know how good he is because I feel like between playing for Sacramento before they made a playoff run and then going to the Pacers, like he has just kind of been hidden in obscurity, despite the fact that he might be like one of the six best guards in the NBA. Like he's really good. Jaren Jackson Jr. playing defense with international rules will be really fun.
Being able to slap stuff off the rim, my goodness. My goodness. I mean, there's
You're getting
really
me excited now. It'll be fun.
Yeah. And the best part is, man, these games are on in the morning because they're playing in the second right? I would argue probably the most basketball crazed nation on the earth. In the Philippines. Man, that's really something. I wanted to plug a friend of mine's book. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, there is a book out by my friend Rafe Bartholomew. He wrote it like 12 years ago, I think. Yeah, it's called Pacific Rims, and it's an incredible book. I want to say my other friend Jason Concepcion, he and Rafe went out to the Philippines because Concepcion is Filipino as well. And just like took in some basketball, if I'm remembering correctly. It was like an old Grantland stuff.
Isn't the third most traffic country we get for Mavs Moneyball?
I think so. Still, yeah. I mean, with Slovenia, Germany, Philippines, it's great. We love everybody that will pay attention to what we do from that far away. You guys are amazing. We got a couple more questions. Let me see. Most of these are silly. Where can we watch the Slovenia games? That's a tough one. And I honestly got to tell you, until they go to the World Cup, which that stuff will be on ESPN and the ESPN Plus, the best way you can really access it is probably through streams that are not of a legal means. This is a good question only in the fact of I don't think we can answer it right now. Jonathan Blick says, assuming health, what will be the Mavericks' best closing 5-man lineup? We don't know yet because we got to see who Kid trusts. I ask me that after 5 games because I think we're going to see it, and then and hopefully we're not going to be like, Kid, please play the best players like we were last year.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I would say, like, if you put a gun to my head right now, Kyrie, Luka, Green, Grant, Maxey is probably the one, and that if they don't do any moves, and then swap in THJ for Green if they kind of want to.
I think Omax makes a real case by like game 20. I just do.
Yeah, I like.
He's just gonna be a guy that Kid plays, and he should because he's enormous and there's a lot to him. Mm-hmm. Let me see here. There was one more. Okay, so my friend Luke Burns says, what do the Mavs do at the 15th roster spot? I think he's assuming the cutting of McGee.
Well, they're at 14 right now.
Are they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that's the case, then I think they keep that 14th spot open because I was telling because our friend Dalton Trigg, who gets really bored and starts writing preposterous trade stuff. I think they still have part of the mid-level exception, right?
Yep. I think they have like about five-ish.
I think they go into the season and they hold that spot. They maybe bring on somebody that's cheap with the ability to cut them. And then at buyout time, if they're in a decent place, then they sign somebody because didn't the Mavericks lose out on a guy from Orlando who went to the Suns?
Yeah, Terrence Ross.
It'll be a situation like that.
Yeah, the Mavs can only offer the veteran minimum. The Suns still had some of their MLE left, so
that's my prediction. Really, I know it's a really boring prediction.
No, that's the smart thing to do because I mean, the guys left. The guys left are really. It's the Anchorman meme that I did last week. It's like Derek Jones Jr. and Kelly Oubre, and like I would rather just wait and see what the buyout market looks like.
I think that's right. Yeah,
big press for those guys.
Man, 54 minutes. Look at us.
It flew by.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, our fans ask good questions. There was a Maxi. Mm-hmm. There was no Max related question. I hope we address that. So before we go, what'd you think of Oppenheimer?
Ooh, boy, that was really good. I'm a Nolan stan, so I love all of his movies. It was quite the experience. I've seen all of his movies at the Dallas IMAX. That's like one of the last remaining legitimate IMAX theaters in the world that does like legitimate film IMAX. If you've never seen them, like I would just implore, I think they added some show times toward the end of the month of August. Like if you're in the DFW area, it's pretty spectacular to see his films like that.
I understand why now, having seen it, because
Yeah.
if there's 3 or 4 scenes in the whole movie, but then they just film a lot of it this way, where like there's not to sound like Tyson Chandler in 2011, but like there's a verticality element
Yes.
that changes the way the movie presents, not just because of the test of the atomic bomb, but also because of some of the conversations with the characters, where instead of seeing, you guys see me and Josh like this, what if you were able to see Josh and I standing up and talking? That it's a little, not a great comparison, but that's the only thing that comes to mind, where it gives you more of a sense of being while watching the movie.
Because the best way to describe the screen that's at that Dallas theater is it's not 16:9 widescreen that you're used to ratio. It's almost like a 4:3 square, but it's 5 stories tall. So it's quite something. And I think just about the movie itself, it felt kind of like the culmination of Nolan's career, like just kind of working towards it. It felt like he addressed some of the criticisms of his earlier movies in terms of dialogue and writing and plot and structure and things like that. It was a very mature movie. It was honestly a movie I didn't think he had in him, because I love all his movies, but all of his movies have a little bit of a hokiness to them. Like Interstellar is one of my favorite movies. I fucking love that movie. I will go to bat for that movie against anyone.
The more times you watch it, the better it gets.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, there's like the main crux of it is like talking about how like love transcends time, and like not to downplay on it. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a little hokey. Like he likes to get a little, I don't know how to describe it, but like this felt like a very mature movie for him, and it was interesting because I'll be honest, it was a part of history that I don't know as much about, so it was also just interesting to see that from that lens. And I think it's wild that it like that type of movie is like doing really like is like the big blockbuster, because it really is like, I don't know, it's a lot, it's a talking movie. Like
it's a talking movie.
It's not an action, it's not an action blockbuster. Like it's not The Dark Knight.
Sounds pretty amazing though. That's the other reason to go to those theaters is the sound. Like that movie you feel. I will say that that movie was the movie version of Let's Remember Some Guys. Because there's just so many actors.
I'm so sorry.
Where you're just like, wait, that guy? And then you're looking, because like one of my wife and I's favorite movies it's like one of the first things we watched when we started dating was 10 Things I Hate About You. And the character in what's his name? I have to go look at this. His name in the movie, his character's name's Michael, but the actor's name is David Krumholtz. And like you're just watching this and you're like, that guy? Then there was, oh my God, I saw some like just some memes on some of the people who were in it, where it's there's just like, he pulls people out of hats. Okay. Like it's some really incredible casting,
even for like roles that they're only on the screen for like a minute. Like some of the people he gets to play some of the roles, it's pretty awesome.
I mean, I was simply amazed. So you go see, you almost got to go see it for that level of thing. Anyway, I'm sure people are really. And and the next movie I get to go see is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which
I can give you a little report. I already saw
you've already you see everything first. I can't wait though.
I know. Well, I got lucky. They did a little sneak peek. It hasn't actually come out. They did like a sneak preview thing on Saturday, and my mom was like, your little brother wants to get out of the house. Go take him to a movie. I was like, okay, and we went and saw it, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's not Spider-Verse levels of like, wow, this is like a genuinely incredible movie.
Yeah.
But it's got that same like polish and kind of heart to it. So like and visually it's like it's dynamite. I
saw, just to get out of the heat, I saw Someone asked, do you remember Bogey Lowenstein from 10 Things I Hate About You? Yes, I do. Just to get out of the heat, I went and saw Spider-Verse for the 3rd time this weekend. Still slaps.
It's so good.
It's so good.
The one thing about Oppenheimer I forgot is the one that floored me, and this isn't a spoiler because he's in the trailers, is I only know him as Bernard from the Santa Claus Elf. I did not realize that was him until after the movie, and Megan was like, yeah, I think that was him. And we looked it up because obviously he does not look like that in the Santa Claus. He's he's rounded out like as we all have.
I'll just say that,
he's really good in Oppenheimer. So like, good for him, man. He's really good in that movie.
Don't look this up if you don't know. But the guy who plays Truman, of course, it's him. And once again, batting like 1,000.
Yes.
It's just
Oppenheimer
just keeps. And I also can't wait because I'm a sicko. I loved monster movies as a kid. I'm gonna go see the Meg 2 on like the biggest screen possible.
Oh, that's fun. That's just the fun. That's a good.
Just terror. I cannot wait. Just terrible stuff.
I'm all in for movies that know what they're doing. Like that movie is leaning into what it.
Well, that's it for Kirk and Josh and Movie Corner. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna try to do a show this Friday for real. I did, or like I was so sick after Orange Theory on Friday because it was like 105. I just like felt like I was gonna die, and I just didn't do it, and I shouldn't. So if you have questions and want to come talk to me, be sure to subscribe here on YouTube. We do this live link where I can post, you can even do it through your phone. We have had guys do it while they're driving. It's real fun, real simple. We can talk Mavs. We can talk other stuff. I don't really care. It's the off season. If people don't listen to our show as much, I really get it. But this is more of a community than it is a podcast. And I just want to keep hanging out and doing stuff. So, we can talk World Cup. Luka again, hopefully plays tomorrow. Maybe we can have some stuff to overreact to there. I really love watching Luka shooting the FIBA ball because the pattern's different. And that's a silly thing, but it's like I always love like watching videos of the ABA ball just because it looks different. So we'll have enough stuff to talk about on Friday to come hang out for a half hour. Thank you for hanging out for an hour tonight with Josh and I. Josh, you got anything?
No, I'm good. Let's get out of here and have fun with the World Cups coming up soon.
That's right. I'm going to go play Diablo again. I'm a sicko.
Yeah.
All right, everybody be good. Kirk Henderson, Josh Bowe, Pod Maverick. Please subscribe, rate and review, leave comments. I love reading all the comments. They're my favorite part. Everybody be good, and we will talk to you next week.